Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mount Mindset. Now, a bit of a change of theme. We're going to talk about property. And the reason being is that with the announcement of the budget recently, where Rachel Reeves has claimed a massive success as the first female to deliver a budget, which in terms of budgets, it's pretty catastrophic. So it would have been great to have a first female Chancellor to give a great budget, but unfortunately we're going to need to wait a little bit longer for that. And property has been a hot topic. We've got the farmers there that feel completely shafted by the Labour government in spectacular fashion, and we can come on to that later on. I can tell you a bit more about that, because they to say they've been sold down the river is an understatement. But in the picture, in terms of the property sphere, what does that mean? Because there's lots of changes in the property sector in terms of tax liability, increases on certain things, and what that will do to the sector as a whole, why they're making these moves, and what we can expect. The other thing I want to talk about is that getting involved with property is something that a lot of people want to do, and it can seem daunting. It can seem like a minefield, and especially when you hear things like this in the news, you go, well, yeah, I mean, why would we want to get involved in something like that? And I guess that the question is it still a great time to get involved in the property market? Well, if you look at the top wealthiest people in the world, 43% of that wealth is connected to property. So the idea that wealth preservation is linked to property is stood the test of time. It's survived the acid test. It is absolutely one of the best ways to build a future, build a successful life, and to become financially free. The difficulty with that is that if you're getting the wrong information, then it can be extremely tricky. Now, I've covered this off in other podcasts, and just as a little refresher, I'm going to go over what the landscape looks like if you're involved in property. You've heard me discuss this before, that we're going to say that the property game is made up of 4 players. So let's break down what those 4 players are, and you can see where you fit into that space. So you might want to get involved in the property sector if you are got nothing but a dream. You've done your research. You've seen that this thing is a great sector to get involved in. You have no money and you have no experience, meaning that you're not involved in the industry. You can barely put a shelf up. You don't know about sort of legal or finance or anything. You've basically got great aspirations. And I guess for a lot of people, that's where it starts. So it's not a bad place to be, but you are player 1. So player 1 is no money, no experience. Player 2 is involved in some part of the sector. So player 2 is someone that has some sort of knowledge. They could be a builder, they could be an estate agent, they could be a solicitor, they could be an accountant, they could be a surveyor, they could be involved in property management, they could be a letting agent, things of that nature. And what that means is that generally they will have experience at pulling off something in that sector that you need to be successful. So it might be from a regulatory standpoint in terms of understanding rules, paperwork, contracts, and so on. It could be they have experience in the building industry, so that they know how to refurbish a property, change the layout, how to carry out repairs, and do things that are required to keep properties running well and up to a good standard. So that player 2 generally has no money but some experience, and to player 1s that's a great advantage, because at least you're starting with some degree of knowledge. I wrote an ebook on property which breaks down 5 sectors. So there's 5 basic sectors that you need to know to become pretty tuned into what's involved. Generally, a player 2 will have knowledge in 1 or maybe 2 of these sectors, but they'll be missing the other 3. And that's when you hear the ideas of like building a team, because what you want is someone that you basically want a team that can cover you across the 5 sectors. And you might find that as a player 2, you can put that team together, which can be really, really effective. The next player is player 3, and a player 3 generally will have had some success elsewhere in life in terms of business ventures, investments, or maybe they've inherited money in the past, so they will have some idea, or they will have money but maybe no experience. So they'll have some to no experience, but they will generally have cash. Now, a great strategy for player 2 is the natural dynamic is player 2 has no money, some experience. Player 3 has money but no experience, so they connect together quite well. The mismatch is you don't really want a player 1 and a player 3 together because it's the blind leading the blind. But a player 2s aren't all created equal, so you have player 2s that can range from, they know one tiny little thing about one tiny part, like one part of that huge puzzle piece, right through to they're one of the sharpest in the game, and they're motoring on towards building a successful property portfolio. So player 2s can vary widely, and player 3s would be well advised to try and establish what type of player 2 that they've got, because your results on who you're partnered up with here, their experience and knowledge and wisdom and their track record will determine how well you will do. So it's difficult for a player 3, because a player 3, because they don't have the experience, they don't really know what to ask. And one of the things that I've came across recently, in fact, as lately as before I came into the studio today, was someone that had says, look, Gio, we know that you're involved in property. We'd love to ask for a bit of advice. And they explained the situation, and the situation was that they had put money into essentially a company that suggested that they could build them a portfolio and get them started in property. And I'm hearing more and more of this, and one of the things I'm seeing a lot of is that the dream that's being sold and how easy it isn't what's delivered. And this is mainly because the player 2s that they're signing up with are not quite as sharp and not quite as shrewd as they're making out to be. And if you've got someone there that's a player 3 that has some capital but has no experience, this is a tricky situation to be in. So what do you do when you're in that situation? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to understand who you're dealing with. And it's great when you speak to people. It's not great that they've got to the situation that they've needed to come to someone like myself, where they say, look, can you give us a bit of a heads up on where we're at? Because it means that something's not went to plan. However, you're better finding that out early, because if you have lost some money investing in the wrong person, it means that you're not investing in the wrong property. Because, if you think you can lose a few quid investing in the wrong person, you can lose 10 or 20 times that investing in the wrong property. And that's where a player 4 comes in. A player 4 is someone that has capital and has wisdom and experience. And generally what happens is player 4s will only selectively deal with certain other players, 1 through 3. And the reason that they don't deal with it is that because they have capital, so they've got no requirement to engage with a player 3, and they have all the experience, so they've got no requirement to engage with a player 2. And generally what will happen is they will have lots of really super efficient player 2s that will do these jobs for them, and they provide the capital backing and the oversight to make sure that that's done. So it's a very, very, very good. It's a very good thing to have if you've got a player 4, and they might be able to guide and steer you the right way, because the player 4 will understand the 5 component parts of being successful in property. And to give you a rundown of what they are, you've got financing, which is figuring out how you finance a project. So that's really number 1. You've got the legal aspect, which is considering the contracts, how you get a purchase completed, what you should look out for, what you're protected for, how do you get the land title transferred and things like that. The next thing is regulation. So regulation can span from what you can do with the property all the way through to what's the current rules with what you're doing. So if it's, for instance, a house of multiple occupancy, do you require a license? Is it traditional buy-to-let? Are you going to be renting that out? What does the contracts need to look like? What do you need to have in place? Then the next stage that you've got is structure. So how you actually structure that deal when you put it together. So how are you going to put these pieces of the puzzle together? And you need to do that in a structured way. And one of the big things you need to work out is, is this thing going to be profitable? So when you work out the numbers in terms of, if I bought this property and carried out a strategy, whether it be, buy to add some value, do some work to the house, try and increase its value and sell it on, what's my costs involved in doing that, and what would I likely get in terms of a sale? And then when I get a sale, what would I be left with? And to do that, you would need to know, tax regulations, any situations with early repayment charges with mortgages if you take borrowing, and what's the costs in doing the legal work throughout. And the last thing that you need is obviously the building element, in terms of if you're carrying out the refurbishment work, you're going to need someone that knows what they're doing in terms of managing a project. So when you have those 5 pieces in play, what you're able to do is you're able to structure things so that you can stack the odds in your favour. And stacking the odds in your favour gives you an advantage, because what it means is that you're going to have less likelihood of a fail, or you're going to have more likelihood of success and less likelihood of failure. Because what you essentially want to do with any investment, and this isn't specific to property, it's across the board, and essentially any venture that you take on, the more you can stack the odds in your favour and the more you can have a higher chance of success, the better results that you're going to find. That might seem like an obvious comment, and you might go, should you really need to tell anyone this? But take my 20 years doing this, you would not believe the extremely intelligent, extremely smart people that have brought to me a deal or a structure of a purchase that they think is a good idea, and it takes me about 10 seconds to go, this thing's garbage. And you would normally, it's when you start to go through that process of understanding what it takes to make these things work. Now, can you learn it? Absolutely you can. And can you make it successful, and can you make a lot of money? 100%. There is no doubt in my mind that you can make it successful in the property industry, in the property market. But if you get things in the wrong order, or you do things in the wrong way, it's not a guaranteed success. And it's a bit like if you, try to drive your car and you wanted to, just only use reverse gear. At some point in time, you're going to clatter into something, or maybe you decide you want to ride a horse backwards, or just something that's obviously not in the right way. You would just go, look, this isn't going to work, or the proverbial, you're putting the cart in front of the horse. So doing things in the right order and in the right way is the key to it. And you would not believe how easy it is for people to get them in the wrong order. And it can be things all the way from overspending on a refurbishment to underestimating how long something like that takes, or there's, the work that they're doing requires planning permission, and that's an 8-week delay to get planning permission that they didn't anticipate, all the way through to they used this finance product and didn't realise it's an early repayment charge, and they've not factored that into their costs, and now they're not making as much money as they should. So there's a whole raft of things that can be tricky, but are easy to overcome when you have the right knowledge. And what you'll find with a player 4 is they will have the right knowledge. And what you'll find with player 2s is some of them will have the right knowledge and some of them won't. And what you'll find with player 1s is some of them are sounding like player 2s. So if you're a player 3 out there, right, and your goal, this is what will sound like if you're a player 3, you have money and you have an idea that property is what you want to get into, and you have capital and you have experience elsewhere that allows you to work out that property is a good idea, but you don't necessarily have the experience and wisdom in doing this. So you think it's a really good idea to buddy up with someone, bring them up on a consultancy basis, or maybe you want to come to some agreement in terms of how they are paid, give them a slice of the action on whatever deal you're doing, whatever it may be. There's many, many ways to skin a cat. But you have a situation where you're looking for the person that you should get involved with. And because in this day and age, information is so easy, it's so readily available, it's quite easy for someone with no experience to sound like they have a lot of experience. When you hear something like, social proof and how you present things and building your personal brand, which are, look, don't get me wrong, they're all great, but there's also that you can over-promise the skills that you have, or people can have a perception or an expectation that you're way better than you actually are. And that's fine if you're dealing with 20, 30 quid, 40 quid, whatever, not insignificant sums of money. But if you're a player 3 and you're looking to deploy significant capital and you're looking at purchases at 2, 3, 4, 5, £600,000, it's probably wise that you get involved with the right people. And that can be a tricky dynamic. So when you want to get involved with the right people, what I would suggest if you're a player 3 is go and approach someone that you know is very good at what they do. And here's the top things I would suggest that you do. Find out if they're asking what it is that you want, what outcome you want. So whenever you start out in property, there's many strategies to get you many different results. So the best starting point on any property venture is knowing what your outcome is. So what do you want to get? Is it more cash flow? Are you looking to get some sort of capital gain? Not that Rachel would like that, obviously, from the budget, but let's play the long game. These people will come and go. But let's say you want to play the long game. You want to get invested, you want to get your money deployed, and you want to get some capital appreciation. You're looking at an area where there's some value, a chance of value going up over a period of time, and you could capitalise on that. Great strategy. Maybe there's an up-and-coming area. Maybe there's a project going on there that's going to, attract people to the area that could lift property prices. There's many, many different ways that you can approach this. But let's say that's your goal. You want to know that someone understands your goal. Why is that important? Well, why that is important is that whenever you're looking to get the wisdom and experience of someone else, you need to know that they understand your intent, and your intent being that they know what result it is that you want to achieve. And that's the great starting point. If ever I'm speaking to any investors that want to get invested in property and they are looking to get a result, the best way to start that is, what result do you want to get to? Because if I can take this computer, I can go and find you the particular things that you need that will get you your result with your capital that you've got. And that's the power of understanding why that is a really, really important element. What I would say to avoid is if deals are getting, if properties are getting spammed out and they're not universally tailored to you, and if you don't have a huge experience in understanding the structure of deals or understanding projections or calculating out forecasted returns and then measuring the ability to achieve those returns, I would stay away from those types of ideas where a property just pops up and you think, oh yeah, I'll take it, because it doesn't factor in your outcome. Your outcome is essentially what you're getting started with. So that is the first thing that I would suggest doing. The second thing to establish is, how do you execute the plan? So do you have, like, if an example would be in a flip, for instance. So if you purchase a property, do you know what all the fees are? If you get to the point where you purchase a property, do you know what you're going to spend on it? And if you don't have an idea of what you're going to spend on it, what I would suggest doing is getting a builder or a contractor to look at the property and to look at the plan, what you plan on doing, and give you a ballpark figure on what it is that he thinks the cost may be. And what I would suggest doing is get a top end number, get an ideal number, and get a low end number. And what you want to do is work within that range, because until you start taking things and ripping them out, you just don't really know what's in there. So what you want is best case scenario, worst case scenario, or middle of the road, so that you can work your figures out. What you don't want to do is buy a property and find that out then, because you're sort of locked into having to see it through. Then the next thing that you want to do is calculate what you're likely to get if you play out the three scenarios: best case, worst case, and the middle ground. And then see if the deal stacks up. And if it stacks up, then you can start to say, yeah, I'm getting a feel for how this thing works. The next thing I would suggest doing is get your head around basic financing. So if you are looking to purchase a property, get an idea from your player 4. Now you could do it like a player 4 would consider doing something like mentoring. So if you wanted them to be there on your shoulder, that you could bounce any ideas off of, they could mentor you. if you want them to establish your needs and find out what you're looking for, you can, as long as you're prepared to pay, a reasonable sum of money to get this expertise, you can get a player 4 to do that. Because the thing is, it's very, very easy for a player 4 to do, and it's priceless for a player 3, because the relative amount of money that you would pay a player 4 is infinitesimal relative to what hole you could end up in with a property. So if you bought a property and I'll give you a real world example here. Local business guy went to buy a property. The property was up for sale for £140,000. He says, look, we're going to go and buy it. We've put down a £20,000 deposit. So the big red flag is they've moved before they should have. But they're asking, my advice. I had a look over the property details. This building is riddled with dry rot. Dry rot has killed many a hero investor because they think that they can do something about it that is maybe not as big, not as bad. And dry rot can be disastrous in a property. So when you get dry rot, it affects every timber in that building. So you're literally going back to a shell in some cases, where you need to strip every timber out of that building. You need to kill the infestation. So it's a significant amount of work. And I said to the guys, look, the repair on this building is going to be £300,000 to £400,000. So you might lose this £20,000 deposit you've put on there, but you're going to, like, this building, you add your purchase price at 140 and you add in 300k, this bit of spend is going to be 440 plus your fees plus any additional charges. You could be in this for 450, 500k, and the building isn't worth 450 or 500k. So losing 20 here is a better option than putting yourself in this hole. And that's where you get the advantage of the experience and wisdom of a player 4, because that player 3, so someone that has money but no experience, would have got so far into that it would have wiped them out, because they would have ended up with a building that would have cost them, 150 to 200 grand more than what it would be to buy another building that was in perfect condition. So the wiser play there was to take the hit on the 20 grand. And that's where you want to avoid these pitfalls. And to do that, what you need is someone that's experienced. And that's why you want to establish who it is that you're dealing with. Because if you're going out there and you want to get into property, understand that outcome, get someone that's smarter, wiser, and got more experience than you. Certainly over the years, we've built portfolios for investors that have knocked it out of the park, because they come to ourselves to say, look, can you build us a property portfolio? And essentially what we do is we build a property portfolio to specification. So if you say, look, my outcome is I don't like my job, I hate my boss, I've done pretty well, and I've got money, and I want to become financially free, meaning that at some point in time, I would like to tell my boss to shove it. I don't want to be handcuffed to this desk for a wage. So, but that, rightfully or wrongfully, whether your point of view is a great goal for a lot of people, and they want out the rat race. One of the best ways to do it is through property. So when we understand that, what we do is we go and find the properties that will achieve that. So generally a player 3 is going to pay the player 4 to go and do that. Or what they can do is they can pay a player 3. A player 3 can pay a player 4 to give them the knowledge and experience. So they might have them on a consultant basis. And the idea is that a player 3 can tap the knowledge of a player 4 and exchange some value in return for avoiding any pitfalls. Very, very clever play. Just the same as if you were employing a lawyer or an accountant or a project manager. It's the same sort of thing, where you can, if you're paying someone that has high value, high experience, and you want to tap into that, great way to do it. The difficulty is finding them, but if you find them, they are worth their weight in gold. And certainly from one experience, I've had investors that I looked this up because I remember the marketing idea is that if you take Dan Peña's sort of model of how many people he's made wealthy with the teachings and strategies that deployed, I think he calls himself the $50 trillion man, and what it means is the equity that's been gained through the deals that have been done by his devotees accumulates to $50 trillion, which is a fantastic sum of money. and someone says, you know, you've made more millionaires, Gio, than Chris Tarrant. I don't think I don't think that was a particularly good marketing strategy to put out there. When I looked up, Chris Tarrant had only made 5 millionaires, and I've certainly made more property millionaires than that, and more than millionaires, because it can be a bit of a term where you're like, yeah, it's a bit flash and all that sort of stuff. It's more about freedom. The driver here is free. I've made more people free of their boss, more people free of corporate life, more people free to have choice, freedom, flexibility, to give themselves the power to control their own life. That is worth more. You know, money can be counted, but that feeling is priceless. So there's the reasons that you should consider doing it. You should consider getting involved with someone smarter, wiser, and more knowledgeable than yourself. And certainly through my own life, I have tapped the knowledge of people so much smarter and wiser than me, and it's such a fantastic thing to do. I've had the luxury. I mean, literally, I cannot begin to tell you the level of gratitude that I have for the people that have gave me their wisdom and shared their knowledge. And you know, every day I believe that I do the best job that I can to show that was well founded, that they gave me their time, because I believe that it's about passing that knowledge on down the line. So you have someone there I remember what it was like to get started. I remember, the buzz, the dream, nothing but a dream, and to get involved in the game. And I think it's fantastic to encourage. But to encourage that, what you need people that are committed, because you need engagement. You need people that are ready and willing to see it through, to stick in and to learn. And that's why I'm reigniting the property community, because I think that having a place where you can interact and engage with a player 4 is a prime idea. And the idea will be that you can have you can put your questions into someone that goes, hey, look, this is how to handle it. Now, I'm not going to say do that in the comment sections, because I would be absolutely overloaded with questions. And I think rather than you know, as you probably understand, my podcast is a lot about mindset, and to explain why mindset is first is that you can have all the strategies in the world. If your mindset isn't dialed in, then it's going nowhere. And the reason that I spent the majority of my time on mindset is I've had lots and lots of people that came to me through the years to help, you know, teach them how to invest, teach them how to build a property portfolio, teach them how to get the most out of themselves, or how to structure deals, how to put together investments, what's the right way to analyse things. And it's fabulous to be able to help people. But one of the things that you do before you deal with any of the knowledge part is you assess their mindset. And the biggest thing that you can change now and quickly and easily is the mindset. That's why I have the Mount Mindset coaching community, because it's like it umbrellas everything that you're going to do. So, you know, whether it's physical fitness, relationships, you're stuck in a rut, maybe you want to increase your confidence, maybe you want to go over imposter syndrome. It's in there. It covers everyone and everything. Be a better parent, be a better dad, be a better partner, be a better employee, be a better boss, be a better leader, be a better follower, be better in the gym, be better psychologically. The mindset is everything. Every single thing that we do well is perception. Dialing the mindset in will ultimately make you better. And in this case, we're talking about property. And if you fix your mindset before you start your property venture, you will fly like a rocket ship, because nothing will get in your way that slows people down. Because when you combine the right mindset with the right knowledge, it's a superpower. It's just as simple as that. There's no other way of putting it, because you are locked in. You know the outcome that you want. You know what you're prepared to do to get there. And you also tie in the fact that you are building the knowledge to get there. And the way to supercharge your knowledge is to buddy up with someone who is been well down that road, so that they can steer you through the trips and the falls. So the idea of the property community is specific to property stuff. So if you are interested and you want to get involved, hit me up. The link will be in the show notes. So depending on where you're watching this or where you're listening to it, go and click that link. So it'll be on my website, giomcnee.com. Hit that link and click on the property community. And I'm going to think about doing a coffee with me. So we'll set up ideally what we would do is do two. So I think we'll do an online one. So for those people that are far and wide, we can cover them off, and also an in-person one. And what we'd like to do before it is if you join the community, what we'll do is you can send me in your questions and I will cover them off, and we can have a bit of fun about it. Because I think that's the thing is that certainly when I was getting involved in the property industry when I started, I like to meet people. I like to shake their hand. I like to see, look them in the eye and see who they were and get a feel for their energy. And technology is great, but there's nothing beats being in that room. It's a great way to network, great way to meet new people, and along the mindset path that pushes you out your comfort zone. You're shaking hands and meeting new people. It just makes you better, because hanging around with better people, their habits will rub off on you. So let's cover off some of the stuff that is in the budget and see what mess they've made. So let me have a look and we can chat about them. So here we go. We've got Rachel Reeves released the budget in October 2024, and she has included key measures, mainly U-turning and just about all their policy that they got voted in for. Not naming names, but cutting the winter fuel allowance for the elderly was one of the most disgusting things that I've ever seen a politician to do. Now, that's a low bar to be, I don't know how you politely put it, but a politician. I mean, not that they're the best people in the world, but even for politicians, it was pretty low. They're going to let people freeze. Now, let's see what they are doing in the budget to help the working people. So tax adjustments, an increase of national insurance contributions. They've increased that. They're increasing capital gains tax, which they're applying to both rates. They are planning an extension on energy levy, so making stuff more expensive. So what we've got so far, national insurance, so your employer's going to need to pay more. We're going to increase capital gains tax. So if you are in a rented property, or if you've worked your bollocks off, paid tax, paid more tax again, paid value added tax, paid income tax, then paid inheritance tax, and then paid stamp duty, and then all the other taxes that go in the pot, and you've had some money left and you've bought a house, guess what they're going to do? Raise the tax. So you have, and if you have a house and you do use energy, that is going up, because what they're doing is they are putting up the levy on energy companies, because they think that that's a good thing. Let's see if that's got unintended consequences. So what they're doing is they're reforming taxation in trusts. So they're going after essentially people that are trying to shield themselves from taxation. So the Office of Budget Responsibility predicts economic growth to be modest over the next few years, with inflation to fall below the Bank of England's target by mid-24. Right. I don't know what the OBR is good at, but I certainly know that the predictions aren't one of them. And the way that this current budget looks to me is that this is going to end in a recession. So they've got here that they want to put 1.8 billion aside for the compensation victims of the post office Horizon scandal, and the adjustments for carer allowance for welfare, the impacts on each sector. Energy sector, so they've got the increase in energy profit levy and the removal of investment allowance. So that is essentially going to shut down production in the UK and cut back on exploration of oil and gas fields. Real estate, they've increased the stamp duty, so the SDLT, for companies buying residential properties. So essentially, anyone that's going to buy properties is going to face a levy that's increasing, and that's going to dampen demand. So if what that will do is that will adjust the property prices, and meaning that if there's not as many buyers coming to the market, that prices will generally cool off. And also the rental market, because if there's less people buying properties to rent them out, then that puts a stranglehold. Believe it or not, I can't believe that an office can't see this basic economic supply demand. What you have is you have a group of people that purchase property for an investment. When they purchase that for an investment, what they do is they provide that property on a rental market for people to rent. So for the people that rent that property is provided by that group of people that buy that type of property, and that creates a dynamic where someone with a need, i.e. a renter, can meet someone that can match that need, as in this property purchaser. That creates a market, and that market works. What upsets that market is when you upset the supply demand. So if the purchaser of the property is dissuaded or discouraged from entering the market, what that does is upsets the rental element of it. Now, what most people think is this. They think, oh, well, that's good, these big corporate guys and these capitalists, it's good that they get ran out. Homes should be for people and it should be a human right and blah, 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 blah. And okay, well, let's just take that on face value. What you're saying is that by not allowing or dissuading or discouraging investors to buy properties, that's going to make rents cheaper because they're not entering the market and driving prices up. That's the thought. In reality, what the data points to is, because the renter pool is the same number of people that need to rent is the same, and then the same number of the buyer number is reducing. What that does is upsets the rental side, because what you have now is less properties available to rent. And when you have less properties available to rent, that drives prices up, because the supply and demand dynamics are, if there is less homes, if there's less supply and more demand, prices go up. So this move is going to drive rental prices up and property prices down. Now, that doesn't work for anybody, because what you have is you have renters paying more, and you have people that have invested in the property losing money or paying more tax. That is catastrophic, and no one that had done basic economics would say that it was a good idea, but yet the Labour government has thought this would work. And there is countless, and I mean countless, examples of governments doing this exact thing, which is meddling in free market. The free market always decides. If you let the free market figure it out, what you're going to do is you're going to find dynamics where the supply demand dynamic levels itself out. You know, if people are, it balances itself when you stop interfering. But you start to increase taxation, you start to increase and implement these things, you upset that dynamic, and there's always a loser. And in this case, it's going to be the renters, which isn't any good. I mean, certainly from someone that's had buy-to-let properties and still operates a portfolio, I don't want to put my rents up. I don't want to do it. But if it's a case of the government squeezing you, then you need to pass the costs on. Essentially, the government's saying, we're going to charge more. Well, that cost needs to get passed on. And when it gets passed on, it inevitably ends up at the people that they apparently are trying to cut costs for, and it just isn't working. And it's a classic mistake that governments make. So it goes on to say private equity and investment. So when you get fund managers that are bringing money from around the world and they want to live in London and use that as a financial hub, when taxation starts to get too heavy, talent moves out. This is a whole problem with the side of let's tax the rich. Well, here's the problem. When the rich provide businesses and provide the capital to then create businesses and create jobs, when they leave, the businesses and jobs disappear. So you're actually net losing out. I mean, there was a famous case where I think I can't remember if it was the Swedish government, but it was one of the governments decided that they were going to tax, billionaires a certain amount of money, and the idea was that it would bring them in, $10 million worth of revenue. So they were applying this tax. It was going to show the billionaires what it was like, and it should be bad, all that sort of stuff. And in reality, they lost $514 million worth of tax revenue because the billionaires just got up and left. Because they don't have financial constraints. They'll go to wherever they're treated the best. So if you're not treating them well, they're going to not only take their money, they're going to leave, they'll take their jobs and they'll set up elsewhere. That's why you've got to have a balance. And this, unfortunately, is not balanced. So public services and education are talking about introducing VAT on school fees, which is, again, pushing more people that would have went to private schools into state schools. You might go, fair enough, but state schools are under pressure as it is. They've got financial constraints and they go, look, well, that's what we need to do. They've got inflation, employment. So employment, again, the national insurance contributions, what you'll have is you'll have companies laying off their staff, you'll have people losing their jobs, and you'll have a lower job growth, and might even go negative where there's less jobs and the increasing, or the job openings are decreasing because people are just not bringing on staff because of these increased costs. Investment in economic growth. So again, when you have foreign investment coming in, they're just going to shy away because they think, look, there's better places to place their capital. Housing market is going to be affected with SDLT and consumer spending. If you increase costs everywhere and it's being passed on to everyone, then the consumer is the one that ends up with paying the tab, paying the bill. And we've seen all that. We've seen that with the cost of materials, the cost of shopping, the cost of fuel. When costs go up, what happens is the available money that people have shrinks. So when that shrinks, then you've got consumer spending that reduces. That then impacts businesses. Those businesses that you're charging extra costs onto, like the national insurance contributions, they then lay off the staff, which then puts further hassle and further pressure on the economic conditions through consumer spending, because people need to tighten their belts. Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe there's only one of them working, and it tumbles down. And this is what I mean. This is why you can predict that there's going to be a crash. This won't be a benefit for the United Kingdom. This is going to be a recession for the United Kingdom. And what it goes on to say is that we're going to have sectorial shifts. So that means that there's going to be some sectors that are going to drive through public spending, and then other ones that are just going to shift, and it's not going to play out well. And you go and you look at even, say, for instance, the farmers. The farmers I feel terribly sorry for, because the government seems to be going after them in a massive, massive way. I would love to get a hold of one of the farmers and get them on just to go into a real deep dive on what is happening, because it's absolutely tragic what they're doing. These guys put in a huge amount of work. It's been in the farms have been in the family for generations. They've spent constantly reinvested, and I mean they're working so many hours. Huge hours and hard graft to just be constantly, hunted by the government. And now it's getting to the point where essentially the tax bill from inheritance tax, if the farm transfers onto the next, the next generation to farm, they're being hit with a bill so large they're going to need to sell the farm. And that's a bad place to be, because then you go, well, who's buying the farms? And the UK government are like, well, we'll just force that pressure, and it shouldn't be something that should be allowed to do. We should be celebrating our farmers. We should be recognising the great job that they do, and we should be paying attention to what's going on. That this seems to be a bit of a target on these farmers, which is a real backbone of the UK and its food supply, and we should be doing a lot to voice our concerns, because it's one of those things that people don't really see the problem until it's affecting them. And it's getting close. And the food supply doesn't get any closer than that. So there's a budget. It can be doom and gloom, but listen, look, things always swing back round. We're seeing what's happening in the United States. We've got Trump, Elon, and Vance just tearing up the political system over there, because there's been essentially in the US a lot of drama, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done a really good job at running the country into the ground, and people have had enough. Like these guys have had enough. They don't like what's going on. They don't like what's going on behind the closed doors. They don't like what's happening at certain parties. They don't like what's happening at certain islands. They don't like the people that are pulling the strings of these people that we call our political leaders. So the fact that you've got the likes of Trump and Elon and Vance and a few other, Tucker Carlson on the Tucker Carlson network are doing a great job to show this. But one of the greatest ones, especially on the back of the farmer point that we've had, was RFK Jr., who's saying, look, we need to make our nation healthy again. Get all these ultra-processed foods out of the food supply. We need to get out these dangerous chemicals. We need to make our children healthy again. And I think that goes back to where we're at with the farmers. We need to look after our farmers. We need to look after fresh, healthy food that people can get, that are not destroying their budgets. And we need to let the free market decide. Just let the free market figure it out, right? Because as an investor and as a capitalist, let me tell you, capitalism works. Capitalism can not work when it's abused and abused, and the same as socialism. Socialism can work well if not abused, but generally it's used as a tool for abuse. And I think the path lies somewhere in the middle, where we take, if you are doing well, we should have no issues with helping out people that are less fortunate. We should have no issues with great food supplies. We should have no issues with housing. We should get our affairs in order, and it starts at home. And we need to do a better job at it. And we certainly need to call out these leaders that are making a mess, because they're so-called leaders that are just running amok. And, when they're bringing some of these things in, I don't think it's going to end too well. But look, the future's bright. The future is ahead, and we will find a path. So it's not all doom and gloom. Despite what's in the news, despite what was in the budget, we can still make it work. Because here's the good thing about talent: it always finds a way. And capital flows where it's best treated to, or where it's treated best. So capital and talent will always find the path. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Mount Mindset. It's a little change. We've covered off property. We've covered off the budget. We've covered off some of the unintended consequences. Now, you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, and I think it's healthy that people have a good discussion around it, because I certainly, over the years, have heard great people that have came to me with a view, and I thought, do you know what? I never thought about that. And that's the art of having these conversations, so that we can get that out there. And the idea of a community is that we can combine our collective knowledge, which is no bad thing. But to do that, we need conversations, we need engagement, and we should have more of these types of interactions. That's why I'm pushing the property community. So if you see this, hit the link below, drop me a DM if you're on any of the socials. If you see this as a clip, hit me up. If that's something you want to get involved in, where you can get the on-the-ground knowledge, interaction, a group of people where you can get steered the right way, a player 4, not a player 2, not a ruse, not leading you down the garden path. You can get real information on the ground, active, ready to go, then hit me up. And from me this week, that's a wrap.